If any of you don't know these two gentlemen, that's Declan Walsh and that's Cyril Almeida. They're both a little stunned because I've bamboozled them into coming here. I think they like writing and not actually having to meet. Yes? But they enjoy talking, yes. They enjoy talking, and the whole idea of this is we keep it very informal. And we get a chance to actually pick their brains and also speak ourselves. So I'm going to ask both of them maybe to talk a little about the present scenario. Informally, sit down.
Informally, all right.
Hi, good evening. I was just saying to Cyril, this is actually for us a sort of a continuation of a conversation we started earlier this week. I was writing a piece just exactly on the topic of what we're broadly going to speak about tonight, which is what's happened in Pakistan since Osama bin Ladin was killed, trying to cast forward a little bit. And it actually strikes me, Cyril, that obviously it's been a momentous month of May. And it started with one assassination, and it ended with another assassination. And both of them, in their own way, it seems to me, perhaps not equally significant, but both of us have told us some very important things, I think, about where things are in Pakistan right now, and perhaps they're giving us a sign of where they are going forward. Obviously, the death of bin Laden, it seems to me, impacted, apart from the dramatic sort of Hollywood-style dramatics of the thing itself, impacted on perhaps the two most fundamental sort of power relationships here, which are number one, Pakistan's relationship with America, and number two, I suppose, the relationship between the military and the civilian leaders.
Sure. I mean, there's a strange thing about this, particularly maybe in the business of writing about it or trying to write about it, etc. I personally had a trip lined up to Balochistan, to go to some of the travel spots, etc. And each time that these things happen, and then you have this thing in the back of your mind, well, is that such a good idea? But hey, personally, as a Karachiite or as a Pakistani, the sense of despair and the complete and thorough and disastrous sort of lack of any interest, let alone policy making on any subject.
I'd like to welcome Zahid Hussain, who has on very short notice agreed to sit with our illustrious panel, and says he doesn't have much time, so he'll be with us for some time and then we'll continue. Shall we continue?
I think quite a lot of people are attacking the army, that why they could not resist the American pressure, and also actually why could they stop the Americans' helicopters. And obviously they are not that much concerned that why Osama bin Laden has stayed in this country for so long, and how could he hide in this area, which is supposed to be one of the most high security zones. I think when we talk about Army's role, one should also understand that I'm not saying that they do not have this kind of ambition, but one of the major reasons why the military has been able to assert itself so much, despite the fact that we have gone back to democracy, we have a civilian administration, is likely this also incompetence of the civilian administration. That in 1995 there was a staff college, naval staff college, dispatch, which obviously are mid-ranking officers. They proudly called themselves Taliban batch. And what happened actually that there were some ladies, female instructors, and they refused to actually see them. And what happened? They were just sitting there, and the instructor would give lecture on the behind, so they could not see each other. And it was allowed in the Navy. And also there have been like since Jawah's period, they were allowed leave to go for tabligh. and large number of naval officers would go on tabligh. In 2002, at least 4 cases where naval officers were killed in Afghanistan. One Commodore, senior Commodore was arrested actually in Afghanistan.
I think Pakistan has the best military, the best police, the best civil administration, the best political setup in the world. It will still struggle to deal with whatever's been unleashed in this country through policies of complicity or not over the decades. But the point is, if we're 10 years or a decade and a half into the struggle, and we're still talking about, well, a GHQ style attack can happen 18 months after a GHQ attack happened. Then, you know, we're in a far darker place than I think we're willing to accept. And I think my simple test is this. Before PNS Mehran happened, if you had asked anyone in these armed forces, is it possible for PNS Mehran to happen? They'd say no. Before GHQ happened, if you ask them, is it possible for GHQ style attack to happen? They would say no. And if you keep going back, and now you have this whole thing with Osama bin Laden, if you had asked them this and said, is it possible that Osama bin Laden could be living 500 yards from a military camp? They'd say no. So at some point, I think for me personally, we need to ask these hard questions and stop giving the benefit of the doubt to habitual offenders.
One of the biggest problems I think we're facing today in Pakistan is that we are so used to telling lies that we no longer know how to speak the truth. And the whole issue of no public opinion being behind something is also now not credible any longer, because you have the feeling that public opinion can be manipulated depending on what way the establishment wants to manipulate it.
I mean, it's not just that. I think you know, SWAT is a unique example, and it's probably a good way of doing business. But look, we're operating in 6 of the 7 tribal areas. I don't recall them asking anyone for public opinion on any of that. I don't recall them asking about public opinion when they went into Balochistan. So this idea that, well, you know, public opinion and that, you know, there's enough proof out there that when they deem something to be critical to their own interests or their perspective or how they look at things, they go in. And this idea that North Waziristan can't happen unless the public is on board. Well, I don't know if they asked me about Bajor or Mohmand or South Waziristan or any of them. So this idea that, well, oh, this one's unique and the rest weren't. Anyone?
Do you have a question?
I just wanted to ask one thing. If Osama bin Laden was the reason to create everything between 2 friends, is that over now? Is that going to get over at all or not?
When you look at India, I mean Pakistan and the US, the relationship as it stands today is really a relationship based on negatives. The fear of what damage the other might visit on you, whether directly or indirectly or, you know, intentionally or unintentionally, and that's kind of why they're together. So you're going to see this bizarre, sort of tumultuous, lurching from crisis to crisis kind of relationship.
But in any case, I mean, I'm no expert here, but I feel I have to interject. It's so tiresome to expect that people are going to be friends to us when we can't even tell the truth to ourselves, you know. I mean,
Waziristan and those areas more like federal administrative tribal areas, sort of somewhat alienated a tribe, they say so. If that is opened up and made part of the whole of Pakistan and infrastructure is made, wouldn't that help alienate this Taliban sort of thing and the people getting more education, more healthcare and coming forward and being part of the mainstream?
If you look over the last decade, it started with the hunt for bin Laden. Bin Laden escaped in 2001 in Tora Bora. He came to Pakistan, as we now clearly know, and so did hundreds of other people. And in a sense, that's what triggered a lot of the turmoil we see going on around us now. And the reason that they were to escape into Pakistan, of course, was because there was an entirely uncontested space which welcomed them for all sorts of reasons.
What do you think is the position of the 3 elements of Pakistan? 1, the government, 2, the army, and 3, general public opinion?
I think, you know, the thinking of the military, as I understand it, is very much dictated by the eastern border, actually. They see Afghanistan as a threat on their rear flank. They see Indian influence through the people who were formerly known as the Northern Alliance, basically ethnic Tajiks. And they see that if not a Taliban government, then a sort of, you know, soft Taliban government is in their interests in Kabul. Because these will be people, these are ethnic Pashtuns, so they have a cross-border linkage, and also they're Islamists, because of course it's important to remember that in Afghan policy, for the first 3 decades of Pakistan, the great fear actually was Pashtuns themselves and Pashtun nationalists, and around the late mid-70s and certainly into the 80s, the army realised that if there were Pashtuns who would be both friends to them and carry weapons, and to be more interested in the ideology of Islamism as opposed to Pashtun nationalism, then these could be very powerful allies in Afghanistan, and that's actually been the driving vector, I think, of Pakistani politics, or rather strategy in Afghanistan for the last 2 or 3 decades. We saw it starting with support for Hekmatyar in the 1990s after the fall of the Berlin Wall. Then we saw it through the support for the Taliban, and we're presently seeing it for the covert support for the Haqqani network and Hekmatyar. So I think these are the cards that the army holds, and they're hoping to play them. The problem is, of course, at the moment that the Americans have decided they're running out of time, and they may try and take one of these cards away from them before they can, and I think that's where things are going to be interesting.
The theme of this debate was Pakistan after Bin Ladin, so I'd like to ask each of the panel members whether there's going to be much difference between Pakistan after Bin Laden and Pakistan before Bin Laden. I mean, are you going to, before the capture of Bin Laden, have things changed, or is this just a blip? And will it continue? Will the army get off and sort of, you know, wipe the dust off its lapels and say, okay, back to business? How much has really changed after all this, do you think?
I think it's actually too early to say at the moment. I don't know. I think some things have definitely changed. The sort of criticism I've seen of the army in public, I've been here for almost 7 years now. I've never seen anything like that before. So that's definitely something new. But whether, I guess, unfortunately, I think if I took money out, I'd probably say things will, you know, revert to top pretty soon.
Well, we're going to end there. There's some tea available. I'm afraid we've cut back and there are no free cupcakes anymore.
For the speakers?
Maybe we can get a few for the speakers. But this was really very nice of the two of you to accommodate us at such short notice. And I'm hoping that this is only the first of many such conversations that we organize over the next few months. It's a good opportunity. People are starting to talk, so let's
Keep the conversation going.
keep the conversation going.